Welcome back to Passion About Music Education, a channel dedicated to music educators just like you. I'm Rachel Hardman, and today I'm going to talk about my top 10 tips if you're about to start a brand new choir in your school program. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with the latest videos. Starting a brand new choral program in your school is an amazing experience and an amazing gift that you're going to give your students, regardless of whether they're primary or secondary aged. And don't worry, if you're not a specialist singer and that's not your specialism, don't be put off by doing a choral program. There are many great resources out there that will help you on your way. In this video, I'm going to share 10 top tips to get you thinking about how to start your program, particularly if you're going to a new school where there isn't a singing program and you're starting it from scratch. So my first tip is to make sure that you sing in the classroom. So if you're teaching general music, whether that's primary or secondary, try to bring in singing into the classroom so the students can see your style of singing and teaching music and the fun that you can bring into the classroom. You will find that when you're teaching singing in a classroom, students are perhaps less engaged than perhaps if they come to a lunchtime or after school club. But the fact that you're showing them your love of music making and that you can, bring your passion of music and different genres of styles will start to engage the students into the program you offer. Students come to music clubs because they like the teacher, because they like to spend time learning music with that teacher. So start in the classroom, start with your everyday students. You will start to see students who are then, engaged in the singing and enjoying the singing, and then they'll start to then do that positive invitation of inviting them to come and join your brand new music choral program. So my tip number 2 is to make the program, whether you're doing it at lunchtime or after school, or if you're lucky enough to have it as part of your curriculum, positive, engaging, and in a safe environment. Singing is such an exposed performance. You're not hiding behind an instrument, and teenagers particularly are very aware of judgment from each other and are a little bit embarrassed to sing in front of each other to start with. So the more you can make that a safe environment, the easier it will be for the students to get engaged and to fully commit, but also for them to feel that it's okay to make mistakes and voice crack and all of that kind of stuff. So that safety that you create as their teacher is really important to help them on their journey of feeling safe to sing and to develop their singing voice and to be brave enough to sing the high notes when they need to, or the part singing or a solo line, whatever that you're going to give them in the future. So when you're planning, and this is tip 3, where to put your club, really look at the students that you want to get involved in this club, the age range, and what else is going on at lunchtime or after school. Because the clashes do happen, and it doesn't matter how much you try to avoid different activities that are going to clash, the popular activities, it will clash. So for me, if I'm trying to do like a junior choir with years 7, 8, 9, then I will probably have predominantly girls in that group because that's just the way it normally works. So I will look to avoid year 7, 8 netball or year 7, 8 girls football, whatever's popular that students take part in. Because if you put a clash in a way, you're asking children to choose, and that's really difficult. You will also find that even when you've put all that good planning in place and avoided as many clubs as possible, there will be a clash. And your students will be pulled into 2 different ways. They'll want to be supportive to you, they'll want to be supportive to what other clubs they're in, whether it's sport or dance or art or debate. And always trying to encourage them to keep coming back. So it will be, if you can't make a rehearsal, let me know in advance. And then when they do that, reward that by going, thank you for letting me know. Look forward to seeing you next week. I'll send you the music or the recording, make sure you practice. And so that they know that even on those days that they can't make it, that you will always welcome them back the following week. There are a lot of teachers who don't do that within other activities. And will shout at students, and if often some of your music students are going to be who's shouting at me loudest, that's the one I won't go and disappoint. And we have to be aware that sometimes our students are put in a difficult position. So the more you can make that space for them to come and be committed, But if there's a clash that you're understanding of what real school life is, you will get that loyalty from your students. They will stay with you throughout the rest of their school year and into the following years. So in terms of repertoire, that's really totally up to the school environment you're in, the students you've got in your group, and also what you feel comfortable teaching, particularly if you're not a specialist singer and you're not trained in choral programs. I tend to start when I have brand new programs with unison or simple two-part singing, but not necessarily soprano alto. It might be part 1, part 2, because that way if you have the boys in your choir, which is brilliant when they do turn up and they're involved in it, it also fits much nicer with their vocal range. You can also then split a unison song up into parts. I always find that the pop songs are great and students really like them, but they're never quite what they expect. So if it's like a pop song that's got lots of, backing track sounds on it, the drums and guitars and stuff, when you play that just on the piano, they go, it doesn't sound quite so similar. And it's quite hard for them to change their mind to what they expect it to sound like to what it sounds like when you do it chorally. I always find that musical theatre works really well, and they love all of that kind of music as well. And then once you've got that established repertoire and you've started to talk about, good breathing, tone, diction, length of phrases, all of the good basic singing skills that they will need as a team, then you can start going into the more complicated part singing. I don't tend to do it straight away, because if you've only got 20 students in your beginner choir, which is fantastic, if you've only got that to start with, as soon as you start to split them into parts, you have 10 on each, but you don't get 10 lots of volume, you get half the volume. Whereas if you got them all singing unison or some simple stuff to start with or rounds, you'll get that volume and that confidence. So what you really need to do is in those first 5 or 6 pieces is pick music that will give them the confidence to feel a sense of worth, a sense of progress, and that they can sing beautifully together as a team. The other thing that I like to do, and this is tip number 5, is I like to sing with them. And I am not an amazing singer, I am not a professionally trained singer, but I do like singing, and I also do it with a lot of fun. So that when I sing the wrong words, I'm like, don't follow me. Or if I mispitch a song note, I can go back, because they want to see the fact that you're still learning and you're human too. Because if they see that you as a professional musician and a teacher still have to keep learning music, then it encourages them to also be brave. So especially with beginner students, we think that because they sing a lot of pop songs that they're really secure on their pitching. But if you take away that comfort or that security that you will give them in that rehearsal, then they don't know where to find those notes. We have to also, you wouldn't expect a beginner saxophone player to be able to play a great big solo unaccompanied. So we've also got to think about that with our singers, particularly as most of them won't be having one-to-one singing lessons each week to really develop that technique. I also think, and this leads into point 6, you also need to do that in terms of your accompaniment. And again, it doesn't, if you're not a great piano player, it doesn't really matter. What really is important is you give them the melodic line, and if you start to do harmony, give those starting harmonies, particularly the difficult ones. And you'll know, because if you're singing along with them and you sing the alto part, for instance, with the altos, if you can't find the pitch and you've got your training like all of us who are watching this video, then we can't expect a beginner student, a beginner singer to be able to find that alto part if we can't do it. And there's often times where I've been singing along and I can't find the note at all. I'm just randomly hoping to find it. And so then I know as when I'm accompanying them and put it into the accompaniment, that's a really important note. And if I'm having an accompanist play in a concert, I will also highlight that when I'm talking to them, saying, I need you to play that melodic line. There are a lot of accompanists who will just play the accompaniment. And again, we have to remember about our clientele, they're beginners. They can't necessarily just find that note randomly without support. So try to put as much of the melodic line in, because if you start with that and give them the security, you can drop it out as they get more confident, as they get more secure, and you can then simplify the accompaniment. I'll go back to the written accompaniment part. But to start with, and if like me, you weren't, when I first started running choirs, I wasn't an amazing pianist, so I was playing a bass line and then I was playing a melodic line, and as soon as you could get them more confident, you would put the other parts in. My next piece of advice, tip number 7, is be consistent with rehearsals. If you want students to be committed to this program, to work towards performances, then you have to be committed. You have to show the standard of attendance and attitude that you want from them. So if they're coming at lunchtime, you need to be there. If you have them at lunchtime in your room and they eat lunch in there, then you should be there too. Just so that's how you build the relationship up with them. And that consistency of you being there, and if you say we're going to start new music next week, you start new music. If you say you want to send them the recording for them to practice along to at home, you do that, because by your consistency, they'll learn to be consistent too. They'll learn your expectations of what it is to not just turn up for rehearsals, but actually to work towards a final performance, which is really what we want. And that is really leading into tip number 8, is there's a lot of clubs that run throughout the school year that don't actually work to anything, and of course students then disappear. If you take the sports program, if students go to sports and they're on the football team, then they'll go to the training, but the training is there to go and play in matches. So we have to think about that in terms of music. If we're asking students to come to rehearsals every week, then there must be an avenue for them to perform, in the same way as if they're in sports, they're performing when they're playing for the school team. That performance does not have to be a huge, great big concert, particularly if you're starting a brand new program and you've got 10, 15 students and you've got 2 pieces ready in that first term. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to suddenly work some miracle, because they've got to take the time to learn. There is this expectation outside of music teachers that we can all suddenly put on a performance within 5 minutes, because they forget that students actually need to practice, and that professional musicians can do it, but not necessarily 12-year-olds. So your job is also to protect that. So if their first concert isn't an assembly, or it is something that you record virtually and put on the school website, considering that's what we're doing, or going out into the community or an old people's home, or even just performing alongside another event, so maybe a dance show and the choir come in and sing, whatever it is, make sure there are performance opportunities, because the joy the students get from performing and the sense of well-being they get is huge, particularly if their parents are in the audience. That is really the gift of music at school. It's the shared memories those students will have. They'll remember their first performance, and their parents will remember it. And they'll remember it long after they leave school. I still have students now who talk to me about concerts we did 10, 15 years ago, and they talk so passionately about it. Don't underestimate the importance of what you're doing in terms of lifelong positive memories of their school, of performing, of being with their friends, performing in front of their parents, going out into the community and performing. Whatever it is that you do, it's really important, and it will stay with your students. So try to make sure that you schedule performances so that there is a reason to turn up to rehearsals. My tip number 9 is to get the students involved in the choices of music and having that student voice. Of course, you should guide them into the area you're looking at. So if you're, using J.W. Pepper or some kind of resource like that, and it's 2 parts, you could send the link out to the students, go, here's the link, can any give me some suggestions of 3 or 4 songs that you like that we can then work on in the future. And it's lovely for the students to have that ownership. They're more likely to practice, and they sometimes pick music that you would never have thought to pick and do a really fantastic job of it. I've had some students pick music for choirs, for bands, and all sorts of stuff that we do during the school week and the school year that I would never even have known existed, and they just do such an amazing job because they have ownership of it. And that's really important, to try and give students ownership. And in other ways is, have your choir monitor who gives out the folder or takes the attendance or creates the program for your concert. Find ways of rewarding your students in that, you might have section leaders or people who are really in charge of making sure the folders have all the music in the right place. You will find that your music students love that. My music students did love that. And as they stayed with me throughout the school career, they then went on to much more responsible jobs like stage management or sound and lighting for shows, and a number of them have gone off to do this as a career. So don't underestimate the student leadership roles that you can offer your students. And my final point, and this is really for you, this is tip 10. Do the admin. it can be really tiresome at times, keeping everybody informed of everything that's going on, but find ways of making that admin easy and consistent. Make sure that you have your music ready. Make sure that you've ordered music in time. Make sure you have your email list, particularly if you're dealing with secondary students, of parents' emails and students' emails, so that you can send the students the words to go and practice, or the backing track to go and practice, or give them the concert information. You can then send obviously concert information to the parents. It's time consuming to start with, but once you've got it set up and you have that as a spreadsheet that you can just copy the emails and then send your email out. Remember to blind copy everybody, don't share parents' emails. As soon as you do that, it makes your life much easier and everybody's then involved and feel ownership. It's really important to share photos from the concert, recordings if you can, if you've taken recordings, making sure that your choir sit down and watch the recording from the concert so they can see themselves, and they'll always see all the negative, but make sure you point out all the positive, and that's how they grow. And don't forget to praise them. Don't forget to tell them when they've done a great job in a rehearsal or in a concert, even if you send that to them as an email. Students do read this stuff, and then you might not get much feedback. They do love that very much, and so do their parents. So the admin part of running your choir, which can be a bit time consuming at different points, particularly with that run up to concerts, because normally you've got report writing at the same time. The more you kind of organise it and have that sort of procedure in place, the easier dealing with all the admin for your clubs will be. I hope these 10 top tips have been helpful and will help you start with your choir. Again, please don't worry if you're not a specialist singer. Children love singing and they will love working with you, and as long as you bring joy and enthusiasm to the rehearsals, teach them a range of genres, open up their minds to this wonderful world of music, and give them a chance to perform, they'll be totally loyal and they will love being in your choir. So if you're worried about starting it, don't be worried, go do it and have great fun. If you've enjoyed this video, let me know. If you'd like more of these videos, please let me know in the comments below, and I will see you again here on Passionate About Music Education.